And we're going to start with Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler, also a former senator from Georgia. And she was out here in my neck of the woods in California trying to help out a lot of the fire victims who've been abandoned by the governor, been abandoned by the mayor. We're learning about scandal after scandal, the efforts to try to slow down permitting and cover up some of all of the nonsense that's been done by the Democrats in the single party town and state that we live in. Administrator Loeffler, it's great to have you on the program, and I'm really pleased to make your acquaintance here on the air. And just tell me what you were up to out here in California this week.
Well, Alex, it's a great honor to be on with you. And look, I'm out here still in California. I'm in San Diego today. We were in Los Angeles yesterday for one reason and one reason only, because President Trump recognizes that 13 months after the disastrous wildfires, things are not getting better. And that one disaster has now turned into a second disaster, which is the inability of state and local officials to coordinate any kind of recovery. And I know it's been well documented, but now President Trump is taking action. I was out here with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. We were on the ground with wildfire survivors yesterday. And thanks to President Trump's executive order, we're already seeing progress being made, but there is so much more to do because of the neglect, the incompetence, and the lack of accountability happening out here.
So from your context as a small business administrator, I'm very local to the Palisades in particular, and also Altadena. Sean, our board operator, lost his home in the Altadena fires. There's so many connections here. Everyone has a personal connection. And I spent a lot of time in the Palisades growing up, and they had all these charming small businesses. Many of them are burned to the ground. What's the path to restoration? And do they have any real advocates here who are actually based in the state? It feels like anyone who's fighting for these people seem to be coming from Donald Trump's government.
Well, that's right. The Trump administration is right now the de facto governmental advocate for these wildfire survivors from Altadena to Pacific Palisades. And we met with county and city officials yesterday, and it was pretty apparent that the city doesn't have as strong as advocacy as they could have. The county has some advocacy, but what it's fallen to are the residents. And these residents are unbelievable. They are leaders, they're resilient, they're parents, they're seeing their kids go without their schools, they don't have their churches and small businesses rebuilt. And you're exactly right. It's all the inputs that make a community a home to people. And these residents are fighting to get that back. And that's why I think it's critically important that the federal government raise the alarm on this response. At the SBA, we've never seen anything like it. We've never had to extend for 6 months the timeline that you have to use your disaster proceeds. And frankly, that timeline is going to come up pretty quickly in June. And residents just don't have the confidence in local government to make things happen. So people are really on the fence here about what to do with their lives and livelihoods, because it all hangs in the balance because of the massive inaction. And look, let's face it, it starts at the top. The governor is completely disconnected from this, had no representation in any of the meetings yesterday. It was pretty clear the city and the county weren't coordinated. But what I'm seeing are the residents on the ground are very coordinated, and we are here to support them.
So one thing that's really noteworthy here is that it feels as though the mayor is mostly absentee, trying to cover her own behind. The governor, we were making fun of him yesterday because he was posing in front of a freight train in order to promote a high-speed rail, which was completely absurd. Shows you how out of touch he is. Those of you who missed yesterday's show, that was kind of a riot when we got to point that out. But did you get to meet with anyone who's actually in leadership here in this city and state? Did you meet with Karen Bass? Is Newsom around?
Yeah, so we did meet with Mayor Bass. We met with a county board member, Supervisor Barger, and we had somewhat productive conversations, but at the city level, not incredibly encouraging. In fact, we met in a site that had a permitting, like a so-called one-stop shop permitting site that had been stood up the week before following President Trump's executive order, which was allowing the SBA to help borrowers, our 12,600 borrowers, where $3.2 billion hangs in the balance because they're not getting the permits from the city. So the city quickly stood up a one-stop permitting shop, which had no customers at it, last week after the president did this. So what we're seeing is a massive disconnect and really a loss of trust at the local level in city officials And now you see the news coming out that the mayor probably managed the report, if you will,
Yeah.
in terms of what the after action report said. So that's just going to be one more thing where the loss of confidence and accountability is playing out in real time.
Yeah, so this is and I haven't got a chance to bring this up to the audience, but this has been the big scandal, particularly here in Los Angeles, that the mayor was heavily involved in trying to essentially dumb down this after action report on the fire damage and trying to remove criticism specifically of leaders who were in charge, namely herself and other Democrats, and any criticism for not deploying sufficient engines, fire engines, forecasting the high winds, and I don't know, going to Africa, for example, when this thing was coming and bearing down on the city, which is what she did. So all of this is a massive scandal. And the question is there any accountability that for these people? Before I want to move on to sort of a productive Trump approach to getting stuff straight, but do we think there's going to be any accountability for anyone who's responsible here?
Well, I think that's what the president is trying to do by signing this executive order, which enables residents to bypass these permitting delays and get shovels in dirt.
Amazing.
And get concrete footings poured and rebuild and just say, we're moving forward. And we're also trying to say that we need more attention on this because right now there's more attention on posing for Vogue by Gavin Newsom or promoting his book. If he spent just a fraction of the time that he spent with Vogue or on his book tour with these residents, he would see the pain and the suffering. 75% of these residents living in temporary housing, most facing financial ruin right now. And you know, at the local level, just not a general awareness of the pain that they're seeing on the ground. So the accountability is going to have to come from the people that live in California, but that's not going to stop us from continuing to keep up the focus because this is the result of failed policies where they stopped forest management, they didn't fill the water reservoirs, and they blocked efforts to make this city fireproof because they love the Green New Scam.
So I want to walk through all of the positive approaches you guys are going to take in the next segment. But before we get to that, just give me a sense of some of the specifics that you're hearing from some of these residents who are there. Because I'll tell you, from the people in my life who've been affected, there is still very negative about the prospect of reclaiming what's theirs and rebuilding a life.
I understand because there's a lack of accountability at the state and local level. And what they're seeing is there's now a lack of realistically, they're running out of time on their mortgage forbearance. They may have just a few months left on that, and they're going to have to start paying mortgages on homes they don't owe. They're going to owe state and local taxes on properties they cannot access. This is one of the highest, Pacific Palisades, at least one of the highest tax-paying areas. Right now, they don't even have basic services like lighting, street sweeping. They're getting flat tires. There's really no focus on this community. And then just the last one is the inability to have certainty around the city's commitment to rebuild. And frankly, state and local officials are not holding the insurers accountable, which is not an excuse for the inaction. They love to use that as an excuse, but they're not advocating or dealing with the FAIR plan, which is kind of the failed insurance policy that used to be a insurer of last resort. Now it's a insurer of first resort because the state has chased all the insurers out with their policies. So what we're trying to do is bring order to that chaos, and I think we'll see some progress.
So you guys are going to be rebuilding hopefully at Trump speed. That's the approach you and Lee Zeldin are taking. And you've issued a bunch of new guidelines. When we come back from the break, Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler is going to walk through all the changes that are made. And those of you who are local will get you some directives on what you can do to take advantage of the new sheriff in town. That's Kelly Loeffler. We'll be right back. Very pleased to have Kelly Loeffler, the Small Business Administrator from Trump's administration, here on the program with me. Kelly, I want to ask you about Small Business Administration, which approved, I think, 12,000 plus loans for Los Angeles, totaling over $3 billion, and only a fraction of those have been dispersed. What is the bottleneck for all of this? I know there's city permitting backlogs, preventing money from reaching homeowners, but this is a really supreme outrage here, and what are the solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question because unfortunately there's not a single silver bullet that's going to solve this, but the permitting backlogs are real. Yesterday when we met with the mayor's office, we learned that out of roughly 1,800 permit applications, about 1,000 had come back to the residents for amendment. They were looking into the reasons for that. But look, this is where President Trump said, okay, this is time for me to step in. He's the builder in chief. No one is a better builder than President Trump. And he cares about what's going on in California. He's cared about it since day one. That's why he signed the executive order to help the SBA help residents self-certify their compliance with state and local laws. What does that mean? It means residents can go to sba.gov right on our homepage. They can click on a link. We've already had thousands of people go. They can download two very simple forms, one for themselves to self-certify that they're in substantial compliance, in full compliance actually, with state and local regs, and one for their builder. Now, what does that allow them to do? It means that if they have had a permit on file more than 60 days, that they can self-certify that they're in compliance and put shovels in dirt and start standing up their homes again. So this is exciting. We've already had hundreds of people download the forms. We've been told that this is actually helping get things moving on the ground. It's not a performative half measure, which is what seems to be going on locally. This is full on permitting and rebuilding right now.
So what you laid out with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is enough delays. It's time to rebuild wildfire zones at Trump speed. That was the headline in the New York Post in an op-ed you guys wrote together. I'm looking at what that's like. So we're cutting red tape. We're trying to expedite the ways people rebuild. You're talking about Trump's executive order, try to bypass bureaucracies and help residents get the building going. Are there any other specifics that you really think you need to highlight to this audience?
Well, I think our message to state and local leaders is step up and join us in this effort, or step out of the way. We're hoping they will step in and solve some of the other problems, which you're alluding to. It's not as simple as that. And we talked to the residents in our roundtable about that yesterday. We understand this is more than permitting, but this is a signal that this administration is here for the long haul. And so it's deal with your state insurance problem, deal with the lack of incentives for insurers to come in and provide insurance in the state, deal with forest management, with water management. I mean, I'm out here in California today. It's in the 80s and we got Santa Ana winds. Where are the water levels? And, this is an ongoing issue. And you've got, the after action report that said that the city had called off the fire department at the same time that the mayor had cut the budget for the fire department. So we need real accountability, and we hope this is a forcing function.
Yeah, I hope so too. One thing that I'm concerned about as a Californian is fraud. And one thing that I noticed you guys did is you guys recently barred loans to non-citizens, which of course suggested there were loans going to non-citizens, which is completely crazy considering we have a budget deficit here in this state. And of course we have a budget deficit on a federal level, and we're giving out loans to people who shouldn't even be here. I mean, did you uncover a lot of fraud thus far? And are you concerned there's a lot more that's just still under the surface?
Well, we're uncovering fraud across the federal government, and that's what's great about the Trump administration. It's a zero tolerance policy, but you're referring specifically to within our standard loan programs, the legal permanent residents. So these are individuals that are in the country legally, but not U.S. citizens. Our resources are available for U.S. citizens. That is one of the benefits of citizenship. We had seen a growing number of people taking advantage of the programs that were designed for U.S. citizens. And so we simply drew the line and said, no, we're going back to the original intent of these programs, but we are cracking down on fraud across the country. We announced in Minnesota $430 million of COVID era fraud that we are sending over to the DOJ. I'm out here in California. We'll be making a big announcement here today. And it's consistent with the entire administration that we will not stand for the fraud that the Biden administration tried to sweep under the rug or even facilitate in these socialist welfare programs.
Kelly Loeffler, so glad you're here, a small business administrator. I got 30 seconds. What do people do who've been victims of this fire and this incompetent government? What do you want them to do to take away from your visit?
Well, first of all, this is local accountability is absolutely critical. State accountability. Where is the governor in this? He is nowhere. Demand accountability from state and local. But if we can help with permitting, if you have an SBA loan, 12,000 residents took out SBA loans, only a small number. SBA.gov, go to our website, we can help.